Thursday, July 14th, not quite 9 o'clock. Sun appears to have been set. Canyon Mountain isn't showing any residual glow from a northwestering sun. And I have got a list of deep sky studies that is intended to capture various, mostly globular clusters, by the way, Messiers and NGCs, that should be right on culminating about 10 o'clock due south. We're going to have a look at a very southerly NGC 6231, an open cluster in Scorpio. What's really nice about the software in this is it gives you the background information on the study. This is a cumulative magnitude 2.6, 15 arc-minute sized open cluster. It's located about 4,100 light years away. It's very deep south declination of 41, 49, 30. Probably means that the scope is not going to be able to track it down, but let's give it a shot. So pressing the Go To button. And we're pretty much full tilt right now. It's unlikely we're going to catch anything in the screen, although I'm seeing stars. And they're all disappearing. The next study is NGC 6242, also an open cluster in Scorpio that should be culminating about this time. It's a couple degrees further north than the last one, and as you saw, this one's a little closer, 3,700 light years, magnitude 6.4, so it's fainter and smaller. It's about half the size. So let's go ahead and press Go To and see if we can't center in on this cluster. Wow. What a screen. What is going on here? Well, that was unexpected to see a vast number of very faint pixelations, but that was not a cluster. Okay, it's going to, I think we're running at about 10 or 15 seconds to generate a screen, so let's give it a chance. Hopefully it'll be reasonably centered. It's very difficult to figure out which way to articulate the buttons on the hand controller when everything is kind of upside down and inside out on the screen. There is a nice orientation when you're using the finder scope to be able to move in the direction you want to go, but I have yet to learn that on this screen. Study is a globular cluster in Ophiuchus. It's at minus 30 degrees south latitude. It says it's of magnitude 6.4, 14 arc minutes. That's a fairly bright, large globular cluster. It's located about 22,500 light years away, which is off the axis of the galaxy, of the core of the Milky Way galaxy, but is only a little bit less than the distance it would take to get there. Let's see if it turns up here on the screen. Now navigating. Getting that same pixelated faint sky. Ah, yes! What an excellent view of Messier 62. Lots of resolution, bright core, highly populated star field. It'd be interesting to look up what the brightest members of the globular cluster are. Typically they're about twice the magnitude of the cluster itself. Let's just assume the brightest members are therefore of about magnitude 12.5. That's a pretty spectacular cluster, M62 in Ophiuchus. We're now heading off to Messier 19, which is a smallish, compact globular cluster, again in Ophiuchus. And this one really pops. Wow. See if we can get some data on this. Its magnitude is slightly less than magnitude 7. It's very small, 5.3 arc minutes, located 28,000 light years away, which means it's pretty much square with the center of the galaxy. So it's at a perpendicular to where we are in the Orion spiral arm. I'm actually quite impressed with this particular globular cluster. Now we have an NGC globular cluster in Ophiuchus. Magnitude 9, it's quite small, less than 3 arc minutes, located 47,000 light years away. We are ascending in declination. That's the way I basically set up my list to get the lowest ones first, the low-hanging fruit, which is actually the hardest to get. Let's take a look at it. Now, ordinarily, this would barely be perceivable in a 6-inch scope under very good sky conditions, but look, here we go. This cluster is quite present. Ordinarily, it would require like a 12-inch scope to show as a haze, to be identifiable as a cluster with a few of its brighter members resolvable. But this is actually quite astonishing as a view. Once again, this is not the best seeing conditions. I've got bright lights, street lights, that I can see with my own eyes. Not that it matters because I can dark adapt with the camera and the screen anyway. However, the moon should be rising soon. It's the day after the full moon, so we're entering the third quarter. I am just impressed with what an aperture doubler the use of the Rev 2 imager is. I believe I'm still operating at 128 flood, and I've got about 36 decibels of automatic gain control. The stars look quite nice. Not as pinpricky as they might through the eyepiece, but certainly much brighter. Wow. That's NGC 6284, which should just be detectable through a 6-inch telescope, but obviously a resolved cluster to some degree here using the imaging system. Okay, now, as you see on the screen in front of you, we have another NGC globular cluster at Ophiuchus. This one's also quite about the same size as the last, slightly fainter. A 10-inch telescope should resolve it. It's located some 27,000 light years distant, so not quite as far as the last one, and is 22 degrees below the Earth's, the equatorial band of the Earth, the 0 point. So we are definitely climbing higher towards the north as we proceed with this. So let's take a look at it. Scope's now repositioned. There's the cluster. Looks a little coarser than the last one, although there must be at least maybe as many as a dozen resolvable stars in it. NGC 6287. I think I might have mentioned, a 10-inch scope should reveal the fact that this is a globular cluster with a few of its brighter members resolvable. We can assume that basically you have to add maybe 6 magnitudes onto the brightness of a globular cluster to determine out what its brightest members are. So these should be pushing the 14th magnitude easily enough. The stars that we are resolving. Stars that would not be visible through this 6-inch scope through the eyepiece. Here we have Messier IV. It's a globular cluster, very bright, magnitude 5.4, and quite large, and no wonder it's so large. It's only 7,200 light years distant. Do not expect this one to be particularly dense. So let's go ahead and have a look at it. This may be the one that has a line of stars across it. There's all that pixelation. Oh yes. Very large, not centered, which means I'm going to have to experiment with it to get the center of it. It does have this line of bright stars across it, plus this nice arch in terms of its configuration. See if I can orient the wand in such a way that it'll make sense when I reposition it. I think it just shifted off to the right. Let's tap it back 4 times. I tapped it twice to get it to shift right. Let's see if we can get it back towards the center. Very nice to be able to get the entire cluster in the field of view, but it's so large. We're making progress though. Couple more taps. Align it to the center. If that were to occur, oh, head in the wrong direction, so it's inverted. And I can do a realignment. There we go. Wow. Pretty astounding. M4. So I'm going to go down here to show you how you do an alignment. You go to Menu, you go to Align, you just do Alignment rather than going to a deep sky. And then what I've been doing is tapping this screen here, because I've found that when I've tapped elsewhere, it really hasn't realigned. It's been very skittish about that. I'm not sure if that's the instructions, but it seems to be working quite well that way. While M4 should have given a pretty decent view in a 4-inch scope, it would take more of a 5-inch scope to show this globular cluster in Scorpio. Magnitude 7.3, small though, 5.1, and located some 32,600 light years away. We're moving up towards the sky's equatorial region, but still 23 degrees south of it. And if I press Go to, ideally, as it actually reorients, because I centered on the last cluster, M4, we should get a nice centering, and we are. Look at that. So on the fly realignment, even on deep sky studies that have been centered on the screen, really is helpful in terms of making sure the next study you go to on the screen is centered. But look at this dense core. This must be quite a cluster. It's probably another 10,000 light years out from the Hercules cluster, and boy, it would give a comparable view. Look at all the stars, the resolution, the dense core, all the stars, peripheral stars around the core. Very, very nice cluster. That, ladies and gentlemen, is Messier 80. Last view for the night, Messier 107. There's only 110 in the catalog, so this was way up there. It was discovered relatively late. It's a globular cluster in Ophiuchus, magnitude 7.8, very small, located almost 21,000 light years away. And now we're getting further up towards the celestial equator, which means we should have better and better seeing as we progress in terms of contrast and deep sky magnitudinal reach. Let's take a look at this baby. M80. I think we've already imaged it in the past. We'll rotate the camera this way. Well, there's the cluster. Probably take a little while. I bet you, yes. It's very small. I'm not seeing a condensed core. Messier 107. It's not quite centering, and if I were to do more viewing tonight, I would recenter on Messier 107, and I might, and then just save the model into the database here. But there's a decent view. Once again, clearly a globular cluster, although there are open clusters that can seem quite condensed at times. But this is the last one for this evening, Thursday night, 14th of July. Seeing conditions are hard to assay because my eyes are not dark adapted, but it seems to me there's an awful lot of reflected light up in the sky due to water vapor and also the fact that the moon is now clearing the horizon one day after full. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. Carpe Noctem.